it, but if you live, say I have a lot in town, I'll use your house, Steve, and across the road, or the next door lot, a lumber mill moves in and they start running their saws all night long, 24/7, that's gonna be a problem. So there are laws within the town, within the village, that help people to live peaceably with each other. For example, people wanted chickens in their yard. From what I understand, it didn't go through. I think that people should be allowed to have chickens as long as they don't have a rooster crowing early in the morning, but some people don't think that, which is fine. So the village gets together and they figure something out and they came up with a rule. I think they said no chickens. So we've got people that have been coming here and they're asking for some sort of something to protect them to a certain degree. And the argument that it's my land, I can do what I want, is, I get that, I understand that to a degree, but we also are elected to listen to what the constituency is asking for, and this comes up year after year, so there are people that want something, and I think that we need to listen and come up with something that's at least reasonable to help protect some of the concerns that they have. The problem is exactly what and where, and then there's people that think we should do absolutely nothing. So I'm just putting it out there that I disagree with doing absolutely nothing, because we have people that have come here faithfully asking us to do something with some concerns. Whether I think they're all legit or not, some of them I don't think are legit, some of them I do, but I think that we need to hear what they have to say, and we need to come up with something minimally. So just my 2 cents, and I realize I'm in the minority, and this is not a battle I'm going to win, but just for the record, I did come up with some. I think I have some ideas for them. I'll talk to them privately about the racing down the road and stuff. It's something I saw in Brazil, how they control traffic, but I'll share that with them at some point. But I see both sides of it.
Well, thank you.
I don't own a place on the lake, which I wish I did, and I probably would be frustrated.
Might have different perspectives.
However, I don't, and part of me says, well, deal with it, get along with your neighbors, fit in, figure it out, get along. But if I did move down, I'm trying to put myself on both sides of the fence.
I appreciate it. Very well said.
But what happened at the hearing was there were 2 households here that were feuding.
I understand that.
And they took up most of the meeting. And it wasn't really about the Airbnbs, it was about them.
I understand that. A year ago, before this one, a year ago, we had many people
Yeah,
here.
40 people.
There are always concerns on both sides, so it's not, I understand that those 2 are having
Right.
issues, I get that. I don't even know, I know one of the families, or I think I figured it out, but it's been an ongoing, it hasn't been just this year, so there's
Right.
stuff that's previous to this.
There's definitely communication issues.
Yeah,
If people just learn how to talk to each other,
right.
I think that could be resolved easily. I mean, the lady said she used to babysit the guy. There was somebody here arguing, and she used to be a babysitter. I mean, it's like, what is going on
You
here?
know, and we do have laws on the book. We have a noise ordinance, but
I see
but
what
you have to
you're-
call the right authorities. You know,
I would just say this, I know I said this before, but the Airbnb, VRBO, if you're using their platform as a host, there's ridiculous requirements. And if somebody puts a complaint in, you are suspended until those complaints are resolved. So you have to take an action or prove that it never actually happened, right? That's why when people were complaining, I said, listen, you should take pictures of 12 cars there. They're done. They're toast. If that was true.
At least for that platform.
For that platform, they're done. Which would, and listen, let's face it, I mean, most people are using one of those 2 platforms in order to actually be really renting it out.
Maybe we could get that information out to our homeowners on the lake shore. I mean, that's a way to put the power back in their hands
100%.
and encourage them to be advocates for themselves, and then
Also, it also requires you to take pictures when you sign up. You have to prove, and you have to basically send pictures of your smoke detectors, your CO alarms, stairs with railings. All those things have to be submitted before unless you could fake it, sure. But, you know, that's gonna get found out pretty darn quick.
That's a risk.
I mean, if I get a complaint about loose railing, I have to fix it. Like, it's that crazy.
Yeah, oh yeah. Liability is tremendous.
I would say I'm leaning towards having the requirement for a permit. I felt like we're doing an injustice to the town by saying we require permits for B&Bs and for hotels, but we don't require it for this. That seems to be a concern that we're being inconsistent. I also believe that having got on the board many years ago, because of people saying it's my land, I can do with it as I will, that included spinning rotors at 600 feet above the ground. Well, no, you can't do what you want with your land because it has an impact on others. And that's, town government is always going to have to grapple with that. The rights of an individual, a homestead, if you will, the rights of the community, and the common good. So for me, it would be, looking at your point, which is well spoken, you know, when I travel, more often than not will stay in an Airbnb. I like them, I don't want to outlaw them, I think having a permit with some basic rules is appropriate. But we're giving ourselves a little bit of reliability or risk if we have someone who's not following one of the platforms. We don't know. Let's say it's only a small number, maybe it's only a 10 or 15%, but if there's a handful that are just, I'm running this, they're not paying attention to any of the code. And that's a problem. That's a problem where we may be accepting some liability for not having regulations on the books that we would oversee or require. And a lot of people, it does come down to just two families not agreeing, like what happened last time. But when we had the 40+ people come a year ago, it was much more
conversation between the two.
Yeah,
And it wasn't about just, I don't
and
want
there were
my
good
land.
points brought up on both sides.
Yes, okay.
I just feel like we're exposing ourselves as a town, and we're not doing justice to the residents by not requiring a permit.
So what's the consequence if somebody doesn't follow the permit rule?
Consequences are a huge challenge, and we would have to delineate that. A lot of the local laws that we have on the books have a blanket fee. When we updated everything and put it into the web format that we have, the E360, we referred back to the blanket fee of a fine of $250 or whatever. So that's in there as a minimum if it can be enforced. The question is, do you send a code enforcement officer because there's a question about someone who's busting the rules on the permits, or do you send law enforcement? And it's obviously enforcement is a huge challenge. It's a challenge for just about everything we have in our local law.
It
All
does
of it.
put the onus back on the homeowner, though, to take the steps to call in law enforcement or call the Airbnb, which I think is a great idea. And then their permit can be rescinded for a period of time if they violate local law or the,
Right.
you see what I'm saying? I don't know how.
You can get all sorts of down in the weeds about enforcement, and you can write it right into the law. I'm not saying you could put in things like, you know, your license or your permit could be revoked for 5 years. I'm not saying do any of that. I said have a permit, at least give these bare bones regulations that our code enforcement officer will ensure are in place when the permit is issued, and then
Well, the only thing he could go do is you basically were telling them to go get a CFO.
Exactly. In some cases, that might be very important to do. A railing is a good example. Someone who's doing this outside of Airbnb and VRBO is going to say, well, I don't need a railing, and it could be in my garage, and it could be in the loft of my garage. That's the thing we're precluding. If they're already, here's the thing, if you're an Airbnb owner in our town already existing, this permit's not going to mean anything. You're already doing all of the things. So that's not affecting them negatively by having a permit. It's actually helping us then discern how many of these we have, and for the folks who don't go through Airbnb, VRBO, make sure they have those minimum safety requirements in
But
place.
then step back, how are you gonna find out how many Airbnbs or bed and breakfasts we do have in the town?
We don't know because we're not requiring a permit.
But are the people doing it already gonna bother to get a permit?
I see your point. Great question. You always could have that. Right?
You
You
know.
say, okay, now there's a permit.
But
Yeah.
you know something's gonna happen and someone's gonna throw,
There'll be a complaint and they'll say, oh, you're operating without a permit.
it'll come out in the wash. But
But-
at least you have the parameter
Right.
in place.
But
so
you're right,
that-
there'll be some that won't submit a permit and they'll keep doing it.
And then if we do a minimal permit, you know, is it gonna turn into, oh, well, maybe we should add this to it, maybe we should add that to it? And, you know, and it blows up. I don't see the problem right now. I mean, what was the last complaint we had?
I mean, the complaints we've heard are people driving too fast on private lanes.
That's something we're gonna fix.
That's the only thing I really heard that,
Noise, or the too many cars in one
There's too many
area.
cars, there's people are making money and they're running a business and they're not paying taxes.
Residential area.
You know, there are all these,
Right.
there's a lot of different angles that have been brought up over the last few years that have precipitated this
well, they are
conversation.
paying taxes. If you look at the Airbnb, I just got a 1099. It's quite the list of taxes on there. Just saying. So they are paying taxes.
There's the state also trying to get the counties to collect tax.
I mean, there's sales tax on that too.
Yeah, yeah.
But you could have the permit so that we know, you know, like you said, it protects to a certain degree our liability. It could blow up, but it could not blow up too, because like you said, there's a few people that are engaging in this, and it can be, the permit consequence can be, you'll be subject to the law that you may have violated, or, it's subject to review by the town, the code enforcer and the town planning board, whatever, and then, you know, it doesn't have to be crazy, but, you know,
I guess the question is, do we really think it's necessary to do double duty? I mean, the only way it really makes sense is if people were outside of the platforms. That's the only way there would really be a concern. Because if they're in the platforms, they're already overregulated as it is.
It's partly that, it's also, I think, fair to have an idea of where these are. At one point, we debated, and I don't think we're having this debate anymore, about whether Airbnbs, even though they're well regulated, but taking that company in particular, can be on a shared lane. If it's a private lane versus a shared lane. So that was another reason we had this all crop up in the first place for the last few years. And we haven't resolved that either. In the current draft, it doesn't restrict it. You can be in a shared lane and have the Airbnb, which is pretty laissez-faire.
I own a property on a shared lane.
right,
Right.
right,
It's,
and
no
share,
it's no difference than a road.
that's
Same
the
rules.
problem, it's
Really,
all the way
pretty
down.
much the same rules.
What's
Well,
shared.
that's
We
what it
share
is.
the
Like
cost
have
of,
two,
like
you
all
might
the
have
people on
20.
it, share cost of plowing it.
Right?
Probably 90% of the lanes down there are shared lanes.
Yeah,
90%. I mean, I've lived there all my life, you know. Ruby Lane is a shared lane. You know, they pay taxes to the middle of the right of way and there you go.
And they're required to maintain it.
In Ruby Lane, they have worked out something amongst themselves to, you know, keep potholes out. You know, again, communication. But then you've got people, like we had here at the meeting, and they're gonna do nothing because our code enforcing officer, or whoever we decide to enforce it, one big headache. Because they're constantly gonna be, one's gonna be calling about the other one.
Yeah, it's the 12 cars, and if that happened, you know, that happens for graduation parties all the time, right? That happens for all sorts of different things.
Right.
I
We're
mean,
not just being.
you don't know what it's for, whether it's could be the owner of the property being there at the time. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just one of those things where, I mean, obviously Airbnb verifies that, you know, if there's a timestamp photo and all those things, they have a pretty platform.
And like I said, how many graduation parties are held along the lake?
Yeah.
Or July parties.
I
The
don't know.
Fourth has gotta be, we used to have one heck of a party down there on the Fourth, in my younger days.
Well, we also had a request last time for delaying any vote, so more people could be here who aren't here because they're in Florida for the winter. And so there's no rush at this point, like today or Thursday. I think Aaron will be here on Thursday, but
I guess,
again, I'm not necessarily looking at voting on anything by Thursday.
what's the biggest complaint we heard?
Well, and you're saying over the last few years?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the biggest concern that they feel this would solve?
I think, I'll summarize my opinion. I think the gist of it, separate from just what's come up the last few months, is that some people believe that when they bought a property anywhere, much less down on the lake, that they bought it in a certain neighborhood and residential, and that it wasn't like this hotel type of situation where strangers could come in and be using the property. That's, I think, what it comes down to for people who are not for this. Others think that there's a tendency for Airbnbs and others to get their foothold in, and then all of a sudden someone with some wherewithal might buy 4 or 5 properties and will start to transform the lakeside. That's one of the arguments that came up in Kendall. So they obviously put a pretty strict rule in place to outlaw it basically on the waterfront unless you're grandfathered.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree.
I'm just kind of throwing out.
I do think that could be a smart move to make. About along waterfront, that we don't allow a company to come in and buy more than 2 homes next to each other. I do think that's smart.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I haven't really heard anything that. I mean, I get that could happen to anybody anywhere when they come in and buy a property, and next thing you know, they're running.
I could dust off the minutes from that.
Yeah, I think I have my notes from there.
Yeah,
And there was probably.
there were a lot of good arguments both sides.
All these chairs were filled and there was really good arguments on both sides. It's a difficult dilemma. It's a nice dilemma that we have this beautiful lake by that people can enjoy, but it does create issues. And I think the bigger fear was grandma and grandpa have a cottage, we're going to the cottage for the weekend, and then there's 20 people next door that we don't know, so now the kids can't run around and do what they normally do. That's the big, I think that's a big, and that goes along with the traffic and.
So Airbnb, so I have a 5-bedroom home in Rhode Island but I cannot allow more than 10 people in there. And if anybody ever sent a picture of more than 10 people at that house, I'm done.
I think that's what people are looking for, some kind of thing where it's like there's some minimum, and we had a couple of those, like if each room could no more than 2 people per room, so we kind of had an idea. And it's not like we're gonna be down there enforcing it all the time, but if someone does make that complaint, and we have the guidelines to say, look,
I think even at that point, though, it's better for us to point them to that.
Absolutely.
Because there's more enforcement.
If they're under Airbnb.
Right, we should have that, we can have that ability, because if we don't have permits or anything with some basic little things, we can't do much
Yeah, the
except
town wouldn't even be involved with
go
that.
through the Airbnb, which, I don't know.
I mean, it'd be very difficult for us to even collect the $250 fine off of that. Because somebody, with even a small amount of money, would be like,
I don't think it's about that. I think it's about you have in place the rules, and we could get the communication out there as far as different, what you said, make people aware that this is how you can manage. If you do have a problem, this is the town's perspective on it, and if there's an issue, we expect that you first call local law enforcement, call the Airbnb, and then if it's not resolved, then this is what we have in place. Whether it's a ton, whether it's just a deterrent, who knows, but at least gives us a little bit of teeth should it arise to that level where we can push back then and say, look, we're not going to tolerate this. So we have an obligation, I think, to our taxpayers and to our community, our neighbors, to say, yeah, here's what we expect you to do, but if that all fails, this is what we expect.
Would you mind letting me share my opinion, Jim? I know we're not supposed to talk, but I got a alternate point of view here that I haven't heard.
Everybody okay with Justin's phone? Go ahead.
So I don't have a dog in this fight either way because I can see both sides, but my biggest concern that I've seen out of this whole thing is the enforcement part. And me and Steve dealt with this with the chicken thing in the village, and the big thing is how you're going to enforce it, right? With this issue, though, you're talking about people who are making money. When money is involved, it becomes a very touchy subject. And nobody knows how many Airbnbs are in this town right now. But I'm willing to bet there's somebody in this town that has the money to say, no, I'm not getting your permit. No, I'm not paying your fee violation for not getting a permit. What are you going to do about it?
Sure.
And you got to have the teeth to be able to bite if you're going to pass a law, right? I mean, a law is useless if you're not going to take it to the fullest extent to enforce it, right? Mm-hmm. So I guess where I'm going with this is my biggest concern is I see a lawsuit waiting to happen. As somebody that has the money, that has Airbnbs in this town, that is not gonna wanna be regulated, and they will fight it. And is the town gonna fight that kind of fight over something that, in the grand scheme of things, I mean, this is the issue of the day, but is it really that big of an issue?
Yeah.
It is.
I mean, we just spent, you know, however much money on the Dobbins lawsuit, whether you agreed with it or you didn't, the
Sure.
money was still spent, you know, that's where I see this heading.
That's fair, and I think, that's a couple things. First of all, we definitely, as a town board, as people who do both the legislation as well as the enforcement, and it's like the executive, legislative, and everything all rolled into one, have to think about enforcement whenever we do make new laws. And some of the ways in which that's bitten us is lawsuits that come back to us. Ironically, the Dobbins case was an approved permit to build a farm worker housing unit with 2 conditions, and they sued over both of those conditions, which is pretty surprising. You've approved this building, and they sued over conditions that were placed on it. So even in the case where, you know, the town is, in this case the planning board and the ZBA, are doing, I would say, the right thing. They approved it based on all the law that was in place at the moment, and set conditions based on the laws that were in place at the moment, and still got sued. So you're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't oftentimes in the town board. So we make legislation to the best of our ability. We air it to the public with public hearing. We send it to the county planning board, which is a bunch of experts from each one of the towns and the villages with reps that have done this for years. And they have a legal review, and we have a legal review, and then we let the chips fall where they may. And in particular with Kendall, they came along with a very restrictive law. And I don't know the details, but I know that there were people with money that pushed back and have gotten their way. I don't know if it's by threatening lawsuits. I'm not aware of actual lawsuits, but I know that there is that potential that if we put something in place, there could be pressure. And the other thing is, we haven't had this in a while. It's been maybe 5 or 6 years, maybe Shelley will remember, but this first came up because of a lawsuit. I don't know if everybody remembers that, but there was a lawsuit where it was a shared lane on the water. One had young family with kids, the other turned into an Airbnb, went to court, went past the code enforcement officer, went right to
Amongst themselves, you mean?
Yeah, and then went to the court, right. So it was, between the two of them, went to court, and they agreed, the Airbnb owner agreed to, it was like 1 month left of his season, and then he wasn't gonna reconstitute it the next year. So he backed off, so it didn't become an issue. So you're gonna see that as well, where, in fact, the 2 entities involved in this discussion that happened last time are also just having resolved something that went to court. So we don't need to get into that right now. So there's bad blood there that's been around, whatever, it happens. And that also was only resolved at a court. It wasn't resolved by the town law, it was resolved by a judge. So we're gonna have some cases like that where, in the case of Dobbins, I was really surprised the judge didn't take the town's position at all. And, it was a surprise to all of us, including our attorneys. Other comments?
That being said, I think it's poor precedent to not create, our constituency is asking, and not just the couple that are struggling, they're asking for something, and it's been going on for a while. So people, because we have a fear of rich people fighting and pushing back and we might lose, or we have the concern of enforcement. We've already said there are minimal, maybe 12, 15, how many are on the Airbnb, and I'm sure there's a handful of people that aren't even on it, and that's on them.
Yeah.
But should a problem for the people that arrive, say we have a permit system, an Airbnb person isn't gonna have a problem registering or permitting their Airbnb here, they're doing everything they should, that's not a problem. The people that aren't Airbnb or registered, that wanna stay under the radar are gonna do everything they can to not draw attention to themselves. But what the permit does is give us a heads up, and then if we find somebody that's in violation of not having the permit, or whatever, they're violating something along, and it brings up to our attention, they kind of hang themselves. You put enough out there so people hang themselves, and you also put enough out there so that it forces people to kind of figure stuff out themselves so that we don't have to get involved. Enforcement, I think, isn't going to be the issue that everybody thinks it's going to be, because we're going to have maybe a couple issues that probably aren't going to even make it to our level.
Right.
Bottom line is, I don't think you make laws because rich people are going to fight you. You make the law and see what comes out of it.
Yeah.
Hopefully you make it work. And second of all, maybe primarily, we've had a lot of people asking for something to be put in place. So,
Well, and thank you for that, and when we had this debate on the wind turbines in particular, I remember talking to several of the attorneys, and they made a point that actually Paul brought up last time about, well, he hasn't heard much about welfare and safety and the health of the people, and it wasn't in the legislative intent. But it's always there. You don't really have a starting point if you haven't tried to address something that's affecting the welfare, the safety, and the health of people. In the case of the wind turbines, it was all sorts of things that fit in those categories. It's applicable here too. You know, you could make the case that having the minimal permitting process would require is based on protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the constituents. The other reason you can make legislation is because something is against the character and the values of the community. So if the character of our community is rural and agricultural, our lawyers back then said you can pass laws that protect that and preserve that value that the community has for its town. So those are just some fundamental reasons to make laws or to adjust laws. And yeah, you always stand the chance of getting sued, and there's been some painful ones. I can attest to that.
I guess.
Let's call on this one, and then we'll move on.
I guess the only thing I would just say to add here is, I don't feel like any of the proposals we put forward so far would make anybody that had any complaints happy, because it doesn't solve any of their complaints.
Well, and I think I've made that clear, especially after the last meeting. I was approached about that. I said, look, your shared lane is your lane. It's a private lane. I think they came up to you right after me, and I said, we're not going to legislate anything that's going to help that. You have to, whether there's a pothole there that modern disposal won't come down and pick up your garbage, or the fire truck can't get down there, it's on you. So if someone's, speeding down the lane or whatever they're doing, that's a private lane you got to do. So we wouldn't fix that problem with this legislation anyways.
Yeah.
All right.
Can I have to say something?
All right, Paul. Yeah.
I'm under the impression that we're looking towards delaying the vote on this, and I don't think that's right, because you're going to set a precedent. I mean, if someone raises their hand and says, "Can you delay the vote?" because 99% of the other people that aren't here to vote on it or to talk at a public hearing, you created a law, you had a public hearing, everybody that was there was heard. Now have the vote. Whatever it goes, because I might just stand up at every time you want to do something and say, Jim, can you delay this vote? My friend couldn't come to the meeting, or
Sure.
I mean, you're going to set a precedent. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. You want to come up with something else later, but you had the public hearing, now let's vote on it.
There's something to be said for that. We've done it both ways. We've gotten things back from the public hearing, the county planning board, and voted right away. We've had others that have been delayed. We've had others that have been tabled. And this one's in the category where we're still noodling through it, and I'm comfortable with that. So anyway, I take your point. You don't want to make a precedent out of delaying based on inputs, but we as a board haven't come to a consensus. So I think it's fair to keep it. I mean, it's up to you guys whether, if you want to tee it up for a vote and it shoots down and we're done, then that's the answer we give the people.
it's pretty clear that we haven't come to a consensus. It's a tough,
Well-
I'd rather
it's a
keep
tough
noodling
issue.
it around. I mean, it's up to us.
Why did you have a public hearing then?
A lot of good information has
You
been
know?
put out.
All right, well, we'll move on.
I mean, it's not right.
I think this group right now is okay with waiting another round and get everyone's input.
We can vote on Thursday, that's fine.
Yeah. It's up to the group. you know, my setting of the agenda doesn't include forcing one way or the other, or vote on the right.
I think we, the town, at the very, here's, I guess, for my last case comment on this.
That's okay.
I think the town should just put out, you know, if there's an issue with an Airbnb or VRBO, and I can assist with this, be happy to, because I already do this. I can give people the steps for complaints. If we want to go beyond what's already available to the public, you know, however the vote goes, that's fine. But at the very least, I do think that when people come to you with a complaint, or to Shelley with a complaint, well, here's a sheet that tells you how you can. This is what you need to do, in the future. Or I don't know that we want to advertise the complaint process on our website. That's not really fair to anybody either.
About that, right.
Because
Yeah,
you're just going to piss off everybody that has their Airbnb,
Yeah.
and they're all Airbnb screaming at us because we give the complaint process out to everybody, right? But I would have it available, at least at the town, somebody to be able to hand out to somebody so that they realize there are. And when I say it's teeth. You're suspended. And good luck getting yourself back up until you can prove it. And it's all video. It's timestamps. It's no joke.
Well, I'll check in with Harold between now and Thursday, and circle back to you guys. If you want to vote, we can vote. If you want to delay, we can.
And the whole
delay.
goal is
That's
to
fine.
find a solution. I don't think forcing a vote or not forcing a vote, I think we're trying to find a solution.
And
here.
I told everybody that complained to me, I told them about how to handle moving
Let's
forward.
find a solution. It's not about,
And they didn't wanna hear
And they were a little stubborn on that. Which it's just like, okay, so you want to complain, but you don't want to take any action.
Yeah.
You want somebody else to do it for you.
exactly.
There's a little bit of that.
For sure.
All right, budget, I just wrote down, both the years finished and then the start of this year. As Bill noted, we just got the products, that's typical. We're trying to, our best with the bookkeeper to get all the numbers together so she can produce those reports. So sometimes when we get to the workshop, we haven't had a chance to look at it in depth. But certainly between now and Thursday, people should take a look at those. For 2025, we still have a couple of bills. One's the attorney, and the other one, I forget, she mentioned in her email. So we'll be closing those books. All the budget transfers that we approved at the end of the year are done. There's a separate printout for that if you want to look at that. I think I made a general statement. We won't have the reserve impact on the reserve fund balances until our auditor comes through and does the financial statement, which then will give us the actual hard numbers. But B went down a little bit. A went added 2, but it's mostly because of the cemetery fund. B went down a little bit. DA went up a little bit. DB went down quite a bit, which we knew was going to happen. And then water usually works itself out pretty closely. But water 4 and water 2 should be adding to their reserves based on the initial numbers coming out of 2025. 2026, when we got that, Steve asked a good question, and then Joanna came right back and said, can you, each monthly report get, how did this look last year at this month, and how does it look now? So she's added that already. So we'll be able to then look at it, and to Steve's point, some of the revenue won't indicate at the same time that it did the previous year. Some of the revenue comes in at different times between mortgage tax and sales tax and that kind of thing. Along with that, those same lines, we got the NI class, which we are holding on to as long as we can, which isn't that much longer. The money that goes to the county, I think to the end of this week. But so far, interest rate is a little bit less than last year, and year-to-date dividends is $1,800 spread amongst the various accounts. So that's what's happening with budget. Any questions on that? We just had a meeting about the local law for the cemetery. In researching this, the meeting, by the way, is Roger, Shelley, and Steve and I, so thank you for participating in that. Interestingly enough, I asked Corey Winters at the county about local laws versus regulations, and he said no one's doing local laws. It seems like most people are doing regulations. But he was going to do a little more research. And we have, thanks to Shelley's good work, several examples of the regulations from Ridgeway, Heartland, and Medina, the village. Of course, the village of Medina's is like, Boxwood is like 20 pages. We're not doing that. No. Ours is 1 page. That's it. And so we're working on it, and what we're going to do between now and our next meeting is go through some of the items that are either here and they're good, and make them bulleted and numbered, and then some of the items that we think should be added and tweaked. When we had, what instigated this was our town insurance company, HCC, in its risk assessment said that we should have a cemetery local law, and sent us a municipal local law template. So we looked at that as well. But if we don't need to do a local law, maybe it'll just be some regulations, and we'll be updating them and get back to you guys, in plenty of time for us to hash it out. Some of the new stuff that's things to consider is whether we will allow the interment of animals. Obviously, they would have to be cremated. And we would have to delineate what's the maximum number of urns cremated that can go into a plot, things like that. So a lot of good things came up in our discussion, and we'll look at it. Should there be a limit to the size of the headstones? Things like that. So we're working on that. More to follow. Any questions on that?
As it stands now, there's only 2 urns allowed in the plot.
There's really not a limit.
I must be thinking of boxwood now.
But that is the practice. There's a concern, once you move a foot south or down from the headstone, you can do an urn, and then you do another urn, how much more room do you have?
Right.
And then urns versus coffins, obviously, and then mausoleums, which take up more space. It's all part of our discussion, nothing to resolve yet, but we'll make some recommendations after we research it. And
I think the biggest concern is the cemetery operates at about $45,000 loss every year.
it brings in 10,000 and 51,000 goes out. Now, some of that 51, we still don't have the fine numbers on the mowing contract, so it'd be a little less than 40, I think, Steve, because the mowing of the park would have to be subtracted. So we asked Roger to give us an estimate of that. So hopefully for next time we'll have that. We'll know. But it's a loss. It's like the court. We operate the court at a loss. We operate it as a service to the community, and it's not a money maker. It's the money went out. And cemetery is that way as well. And you're not going to bump your fees up to match. We would have to double the charge.
More than that.
More than that.
More than that.
More than that, thank you. I mean, I don't know how many people die each year. So obviously, there's a lot of, even if you were to double it, you still might not do it in a given year.
And you're not gonna let it go, I mean, it's,
No.
people do still take their evening walk.
Talk a little bit about that, how it's tricky in the winter, because they're not gonna plow unless they have to actually do a burial. Justin can tell you all about this, but, so there is an precedent of the snow plowing through there, because it also can affect the plots that are right along those roads. So, there are a lot of little things like that that may not end up in regulations, but things to discuss and to be aware of, that we may end up having to look at a regulation regarding. The FOIL language, we figured out that really all we need to do, and I'll send this around to everybody before we do it, is add basically 3 sentences to the employee handbook. I also sent it out to John Post and to Justin as a new steward to review from the union side, but I don't think they have a choice. I think it's a state law that everyone has to abide by. And it basically says that an employee's records can be foiled, and all that the most that the town can do is make sure that they notify the person that their records have been foiled. Is that a good summary?
Yes.
So,
So, say there is a disciplinary action in the record, how long is that kept for?
a very good question.
Because it seems like that's kind of crappy to keep it in there and that it could be foiled down the road 5-10 years or whatever. It just feels like annually we should review the record with the employee and have some ability to protect their privacy. You see what I'm saying?
Well, you probably, if Shelley's not saying anything right now, that means that Shelley, the person who has to do records management for us, doesn't know, then we don't know off the top of our head.
I'm not sure we can.
It's a good question. She's only had, you were saying you only had one case where someone had a disciplinary
And it
item.
was like 30 years ago.
Wasn't anybody currently?
And we still have that in that person's record. I'm not sure that we can get rid of it. I mean, I have to really,
that's kind of like, I don't know, I work for the state, and after so many years or months, depending on what type of a disciplinary it is, but maybe we don't have a need for it. Just saying, it seems like, say you get a younger person, that starts and they screw up something and, you know, they're disciplined for it, but then later on, 15 years down the road, they're up for a leadership role in the community through the highway department or whatever, and that's in there, and someone pulls it out and foils it and becomes public.
It could be dated though.
Pardon me?
It could be dated.
It would be dated, yeah, but get rid of them after a certain amount of time. Clean slate.
Excuse me.
Just a thought.
I like the
liberal.
question. I think we ought to try to get an answer. Is there
I don't think it's right
records
to pull
management rule
people's
about how long to keep them, first of all, and then,
mistakes over the head for years and years.
yeah. Okay. I wouldn't dig any further with campers and campgrounds, waiting for Dave maybe to make it to our meetings. Dave, give us his report. For January of this month, sent out 4 violation notices. A special use permit was issued for a pole barn. Closed out 3 erosion inspections that he had to have compliance with. He started some FEMA training videos. He filled out a U.S. Census Bureau report. And 4 new style houses are still being built. So that's his report. But he's got some information and some examples from other towns about how to go about campers and campgrounds. And I know he's concerned about it because talk about enforcement, that's a tough one. We've broached this already, so we don't need to dwell on it, but just saying so. Ambulance service, you probably saw the email, we pressed Marguerite Sherman, the mayor of the village, to give us information on the number of calls for 2024 and 2025. Instead of providing those, she said, let's have a meeting. So there's a meeting in a couple of weeks. I'll try to get Harold to go with me since he's got the EMT experience. If not, I'll just go. But we have the numbers from 2023. Back in 2023, when they bumped us up to 35,000 each town, I wrote a 2-page memo. I'm going to dust off this memo. I'll include those numbers from 24 and 25, and everyone can see the memo before we send it over to the village. But it's basically saying we should be charged on a utilization rate. So if you think about it, they're $35,000 a year, 3 towns, so it's 105. So 105,000 is the number. Okay, so let's say they go and say, no, it's 120,000. Well, I'll be damned if we pay the same amount as these other 2 towns. They should pay their fair share, we should pay our fair share.
What about population ratio or something? I mean,
Yeah. Population is one way, total budget is another way, but I think the utilization rate of how many calls we have, and these are the numbers, we had in 2023, a little over 5% of the calls, Shelby had almost 9%, and Ridgeway had over 9%, and yet the 3 of us paid the same amount. And what they didn't include last time, which I'm going to ask them for, is mutual aid. Hospital transfers, another one. They do give us the numbers for that, and then of course the village itself has the most number of calls. So more to follow on that. It's frustrating. We've been trying to fight that battle for a decade, and we keep losing. I think I said to you in an email, hey, maybe we should ask Mercy for
I think that's a good idea.
what do you guys think of that?
Absolutely.
The problem with that is you have to be very careful what they say. Oh yeah, we'll cover you from Albion. That's not going to go over well with a lot of people, and I get that.
Yeah,
So
we had a bad situation this last summer over at Kevin's house on Miller's Road. The kid was weed whacking around his pond, got tied up in the beads,
yeah.
and the only way he saw it was he checked his ringer phone, and he was laying on the porch,
Yeah.
and it took the ambulance 40 minutes because Medina was busy. They had to come from Albion, and then our rescue didn't have an EpiPen on them, so they had to wait for the ambulance. It took 2, and they ended up mercy flighting them to Buffalo. I mean, and that's the scary part about it.
But it's also
we almost
with-
lost the kid.
but it's also with the closest fire department with EMTs and ambulances, so. If we end up, if Mercy says they'll reposition an ambulance like they've done in I forget where they've done it, I'm sorry, I think it's not in, there's one at Clover and then there's one somewhere else. Let me say we declare it. Yates, I think it's in Yates. Anyways, wherever, they have two, and they have a fly car, which has an EMT. We have to say, okay, if you're gonna provide this service, what's that look like? You're gonna try to pre-position an ambulance at Ridgeway? That would work. The Ridgeway Fire Department, like that. They wouldn't put it here, it's not, cost
Not
effective.
feasible.
But Ridgeway would be. So, I can ask the question, if you guys are okay with now.
What does Barker do? Somerset? You know?
Harold knows, they did have an ambulance, but they were unable to staff it with an EMT, so I don't know if they discontinued it or not, and so I think they call Tri-County.
With that
Same
new,
as Royalton, Heartland, they all have it's called Tri-County.
with that new facility going in down where the power plant is,
Yeah,
that's gonna induce a lot of money back into Barker,
maybe we could partner with them,
and that's what I'm thinking.
yeah. Because that's what they thought with Verizon, and they didn't want to partner with the school, but then Verizon went away and they kind of thought about it again, but we should coach them while it's,
Yeah, this place is no joke, they're putting up 6
oh
buildings.
my gosh, I drive by there all the time, it's huge.
Nice.
There's so much traffic going in and out of there.
It's amazing they don't have an ambulance on site already, that many people.
Yeah, and they're doing some tough work, and they're working, it seems like they're almost working around the clock.
Yeah.
All right, good suggestions. Town insurance, so tee up a resolution that authorizes me to sign least expensive carrier. We're gonna probably end up with 4 carriers. 2 brokers are working on 2 different companies, insurance carriers. Hopefully we'll have those in the next week or 2. I don't think we'll have them by Thursday, so that's why I'm saying we probably need a resolution authorizing me to sign the least expensive one, and then obviously when we get them all in, I'll fire it off so you can all see it, but that authorizes me to sign them before we get to our next meeting. Our current one expires at the end of February. Now we're gonna have another meeting, I think, if everyone's okay with
Is
it.
that our liability insurance and stuff?
Yeah, town insurance for the town, the equipment, the people, yeah. Summer youth. So the program can't be at the school. I don't know if you guys have heard all this yet. Go ahead.
So I'm looking for suggestions, and I learned that because the school is undergoing another huge capital project, there is no availability for us because the end of the school that's not being worked on will be housing the summer school program. So one suggestion came up that we go to the YMCA in Medina. They're willing to take us, supposedly somebody at the school spoke with them. And I've been talking to local moms and teachers and whatnot, and the consensus is that most people that would participate in the program aren't going to drive their kids to Medina for 3.5, 4 hour program every day. So I started trying to think outside the box, and I was thinking the Methodist and Presbyterian Church are in close proximity to the school grounds where they play outside a lot. So there's a meeting, I believe it's tomorrow night at the Presbyterian Church. They're going to discuss it with their deacon board. I haven't talked to the Methodist Church yet. I did talk to the director, and she thought it could possibly work, but there's just so many logistical things that we'd have to consider. So I also reached out to Alyssa Smith to see, they do a free food program, so we need a place that could serve food to up to 120 kids. The Presbyterian Church said they could possibly serve up to 100. They have room for it. But on a rainy day, we would need a place for arts and crafts, we would need a place for technology, and we would need and on nice days, they do spend a lot of time out on the fields. My thought was, they can walk back and forth across the streets to get to the fields and then come back to the church buildings. It's going to present some issues for the churches because of restrooms. I know the churches are older, the restroom, there's a couple in each church. My thought was possibly put porta potties outside the churches. I don't know how parents would deal with that, but we're really in a bind as far as where to have the summer youth rec program, so.
The school on Main Street.
pardon me?
Yeah.
The gym on Main
It's
Street.
also-
It's
it's
all
also
being
modified.
utilized, everything is
It's all being
being,
modified to some
modified.
degree that we can't use any of the school buildings.
everything.
The only thing that was getting done was the boiler.
They're doing,
$1
redoing all the
million.
new bathrooms, they're taking down a bunch of walls, and they put, remember how cut up it was? Remember how when we were, there was like 3 rooms on each side? They've cut it all up over the years. Remember that big art room in the middle on the
Yeah.
second? It's all chopped up. They're taking all those down and they're redoing the bathrooms. Not all of them, but they're redoing, it's,
It wasn't too long ago, I remember, I was on the job when we did that bathrooms.
it's not, they're redoing everything, so this is when I wish we had, the other thought I had was maybe the pavilion at the summer, or at the, Town of Yates Park. And if we rented a big tent, maybe, or, you know, got a couple big tents, I have a couple, but, and just for protection from rain, but they'd still have the fields, they'd have the ability to come in underneath like a summer camp. I'm just at a loss as to what to do, because I feel like it's gonna be very the more I think about it, it's gonna be kinda choppy with the churches, although it could be a possibility for an outreach for the churches to, you know, help the community. So if you guys could think on that, I'm still pulling together ideas, I just don't know what the answer is. So, whether to just not have it this year and have it next year, I mean, I don't wanna do that. I think that would be a huge loss to the community.
The other thing I'll just say is, these construction projects always fall way, way, way behind. So as it gets closer, see if one of those gyms is available.
It's a possibility. It's the cafeteria, if we could get by with the cafeteria part and the restrooms in that one area, I think we could pull it off. But they're saying no, so I'm plugging along, I've been in touch with the new superintendent, she seems really willing to support it, but it's gonna be a bit of a challenge, so.
The only other
If anybody has any ideas, let me know.
Assembly God up on the ridge, that, you know,
The what?
Assembly God
Assembly of God.
up at the
Oh,
ridge,
yeah.
on the ridge, that's
Still a bit
pretty
of a
good
job.
size, they have a decent dining room downstairs.
Well, I went in the Town of Yates building the other day, and that place is huge. We could put basketball hoops in there. That's so nice. I'm not saying we could do that, but
And we have a babysitter.
I know, we could hook you guys up, just keep them within the
I'll put them
confines.
kids to work.
I know.
I'll keep
Teach them some
busy.
life skills.
I'll keep them busy.
But anyways, that's our dilemma. So I'm open to suggestions,
Yeah,
and,
It's a tough one.
yeah.
it is.
I think the park, if we had, you know, the pavilion is pretty good size, but I don't think it's enough for them. But they have everything right there, but then you got the lake, but then there's the water here, so most of these kids have grown up where you don't go by the water here, so. Okay, that's the first problem. Yeah, that's the only problem. It's the
Larry,
problem.
what were you gonna say?
No, I know someone the trustee from my church.
Okay. Well,
The
I think she's
Methodist
already
church?
contacted the pastor.
What's your pastor, you go to the Methodist church, right?
Uh-huh.
What's your pastor's name?
Pastor Pam.
Pam? All right, I'll give her a call.
I got her son on my cell phone.
All right, can you see me afterwards and give me that number?
Yes.
Thank you, Larry.
And then the street dance, we changed the date officially or no?
Yes, August 21st is the street dance. I forgot the name of the band, but it's the one that came last year. They enjoyed themselves. They're giving us the same rate. And I've got a couple ladies that are going to help me try to get sponsors again so that we can pay for it that way as much as possible. And every year I'm trying to get started a little earlier, but if anyone wants to help, let me know. Steve, you can partner with me again if you want. Or Bill, you can partner with us too. That'd be great. You could triple it. Harold is not really, he's there for the medical
This is-
part, but,
Yeah,
and he does the grunt work like the trailer and some of that stuff, so
yeah,
that
the
works out.
fifth trailer.
And then the town always helps with the tables and stuff.
He did say the band leader said the fifth
Road
trailer
sign.
wasn't quite big enough for them, remember? What was
Yeah, I'll ask them again. I said something to him about that. He said, no, I think we'll be fine. So, I don't know, maybe it'll be a problem again when he gets here, but it wasn't wide enough, the trailer, but we can try to maybe do that. Yeah.
We really need fire police this year. I mean, we were very close to having an issue last year. I don't know if you guys
Well, because
took it as serious as I did, but
the signage, and when.
yeah.
The road closed.
Right.
Right.
But somebody's got to be out there to talk to these people. I mean, the road closed sign don't mean nothing to anybody, and all it could have took was one drunk driver, one kid not paying attention, and you got a tractor trailer coming down to Eagle Street trying to get.
Remove the roadblocks.
Well,
So
Yeah,
that
but
is a
we have
note
an
about.
auxiliary
And it was the
police.
first vehicle through once you moved the sign too.
Do we have an auxiliary fire police?
I'm not sure, Sue.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
We always
Right.
asked the fire
That
department,
is a
they
good
didn't have
point,
anybody
though, thanks.
available last time.
Pardon me?
We asked the fire department to help with volunteers, they just didn't have anybody available.
Yeah,
this
I'll
last
ask
week.
again early.
Yeah.
He was definitely open to.
And that's where
to
it's
doing-
handy, is having someone at the roadblock explaining what's going on.
Maybe I can, re-engage the Lions.
Yeah.
That's a possibility as a public service. We can get a few of those guys down there, so.
Okay,
All right.
Thank you.
I think that's it.
I sent out the email that we got from the county for feedback on the Association of Municipalities. This is a monthly meeting. They've had very poor attendance, and they were asking for feedback. And I don't know if anybody had a chance to look at it, but the survey's brief. I can fill it out, but I just want to make sure I'm filling it out based on what we all think. Who's filling it out? You, and by the way, you can also fill it out separately, but if you want, go ahead. The question about how often, I'm occasional, so they say monthly, occasionally, rarely, I've not attended. Next question is, what are the primary reasons you do not attend? And I think it's partly, for me, it's the topics, and that there's no real fruit, no real outcome. You know, I dare them to have a meeting about sales tax, right? They're not gonna do sales tax. The next one's,
This time.
yeah, it's assessors.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe maybe that's the feedback we get, you know, it's the topic, and you're not willing to grapple with the issues that we really want to talk about. That's how I feel. What changes would make us attend more? And there's a section for open suggestions. So anything you want, or do you want to just, if you fill it out yourselves? Free beer, huh?
No, free meal.
The county gas tax,
The sales tax?
the county, yes, the county sales tax, and the county, the tax, how much for gas, because we are still very high in Orleans County.
Mhm.
And I think they get, what do they get, how does that work out?
It's not just, it's really, it's just our area.
But
I
just
think
in Niagara
Holly's 10
County-
cents cheaper than we are.
Niagara County or Genesee, I think it's less. So what?
I think they get
sales tax,
4%.
what portion do they take
They get 4% of every gallon.
of every gallon?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
So those are some things I'd like to know, what we could help, how to help people. We don't need any, I mean, our services are decent and we all kind of help each other, but how can we break this down?
Anything else like the time of day or day of week? I mean,
It just doesn't, like you said, it doesn't.
It's mainly the topics. It really is, because I wouldn't mind going and, sitting down and spending an hour and a half up there,
yeah.
But if
But
it's,
you don't wanna waste your
what
time.
do I wanna talk to a tax assessor for? We're just gonna get the plate anyway, so.
Well, yeah, it's a meeting that there would be a lot of attendance and there'd be a lot of negative feedback.
Yeah.
I mean, did you see the latest hub report? Maybe you saw it. He put the numbers out there. It went up another 2+ million in sales tax, and they're getting the exact same amount for everybody.
We're not getting any
Pretty
of
criminal.
that back. Like,
Nothing.
we're not getting anything.
And-
Oh, the state's screwing them, but yeah.
Yeah, but still.
The state mandates are screwing the county bad.
Right, but the last meeting this came up was about 2 years ago, and Jack Welch said that. And I said to him in front of a bunch of people, I said, yeah, but Jack, when you say all these mandates, you never say how much of them you get money back from the state to cover. So it's one thing to say you have 90% of your budget is mandates. It's another to say, of that 90%, what's the percentage that you get money back from the state, or you get it through taxation? In other words, you're not really at a loss. Whereas over here, this whole category is a bonus to you and to no one else, and the only reason you're getting this bonus is because people like you or whomever invest in businesses that are giving sales tax receipts to you. So why in the world do you, and he doesn't budget for that. It's not like they budgeted for an extra $2 million this year, but they got it.
what they got.
Well, isn't that nice?
And they got a nice grant.
And then
For the
that
public
amount,
safety building.
that amount alone could buy 2 new fire trucks with ladders.
Well, taxes still went up. Taxes still went up.
Taxes still
2%,
went up.
2% on
And they
top of
can
it.
build one, right?
Anyways, all right, topics, I'll fill it out, and then feel free to fill it out yourself, we all have that email. Yeah, and if Billy, if you can attend, I don't think I'm gonna go to that next one.
That's
It's
interesting,
nice to
though,
have
they're
somebody-
gonna kick back on some of those mandates. I didn't know that.
Well, the counties, you mean,
Do
yeah.
you wanna know what, did I send it to you, the Yates Child Eye, their school buses? They went all electric this year.
Yeah,
And
that'll work out.
he said, the lady asked her, did you compare for the cost of diesel? Oh yeah, we compared from the cost of the buses, cost of the gas and maintenance and everything, and it comes out just about even. And she said, well, how is it even compared? She said, he goes, with all the electrical school buses, with all the grants and rebates we get, it comes out even as a diesel. That's how they're making it even.
That's the only way.
And he fudged around with the numbers of, they get 90 minutes on the bus, but if it's cold out, it's less, and if they're running the heater higher, it's even less.
Yeah.
So there's no, the children are basically, I mean, you're kind of
That's
playing with
scary.
fire a little bit. Yeah, especially on these days where
Yeah.
it's 2 below,
My
So-
brother delivers those,
crazy.
and he drives them from Batavia to Syracuse. And normally they have to stop at Waterloo to charge the bus. So literally they sit there for an hour and a half, charge the bus, go the rest of the way. Now, if it's cold, they have to get off the thruway at either Leroy or Scottsdale
Scottsville.
and go to a gas station to charge.
And I bet you they don't include the cost of the employee's salary in that.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
another.
It's just a farce, and there's a lot of smoke and mirrors.
Oh, yeah.
Every, you see it more and more.
All right, roundtable, anything more to discuss that we haven't hit on already?
I just wanted to, and I'm sure we all agree that town's guys are doing a great job.
Yeah.
I get up early, get up about 4, I see you go by. Sometimes I come in about midnight. The other night I almost didn't make it in my driveway. I don't know who was driving, but I got stuck at the end. I'm shoveling, there comes the snowplow. I have my lights on, and
Yeah.
I just made it in, but I'm thinking, oh, I wish they could just push me in because my drivers. But you're doing a great job, and we're hearing a lot of positives in the community about the road. So thank you. I know it's
For
brutal
sure. A lot of
work.
extra hours, I know, and diligence. Crazy
Stay safe.
winter.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anything else for the group?
This is kind of personal thing. There was some things said through emails over the last month that kind of hurt my feelings a little bit. I don't mean to step on anybody's toes when I throw out a suggestion. And I'm not trying to change any wheels, redesign them. I'm here for what the people voted me in for. And I feel it's my duty to give the ideals when I have them. And it's not saying that you guys haven't been working on them for the years. I just don't know about them.
Bill, I accept responsibility. I sent a text out in sheer frustration, and I apologize for that. I was frustrated that Harold made a comment on something that we already voted on, that he voted for, and his comment was negative against it, and I was frustrated because we had already voted on it, and I was frustrated because it seems like all the work we do to try to save money and make money, and then what you said, I apologize, but it hit me wrong. Like, yeah, we're all, that's kind of obvious. We've been doing this for a long time. So I apologize. I was out of line to say it like that, and I was frustrated. Pardon me?
And I appreciate it.
And I shouldn't have responded the way I did. I apologize, but I think we're all on the same page. We have a good team. I was very frustrated with Harold, and I'll tell him so, because he has a tendency to spout off after the fact and he knows that. I wouldn't,
We all know
anything
that.
I'd say to him, pardon me?
We all know that.
Yeah, so that's where my frustration lies, because we put in all these hours and hours, and we are accused of spending frivolously all the time, and it's like, I have just as much trouble paying my taxes as the next guy. I'm not gonna spend money on stuff that I don't think is valuable. However, I do think we try to reward our employees the best we can. You know that I struggled with some of the things that went out this year, but that's what we all agreed on. So I think we're all on the same page, I really do, and I just got frustrated, and it was a
and I think,
late night, and I
I
spun
think
it off.
too, thank you, Susan, and I think too, I'm glad you brought this up. I think we get into a flurry sometimes with text in particular. Emails not so much. Emails sometimes, you're a little bit more thoughtful and thoughtfully done, but text, and plus which text you're on. I know this happened several times when we were going through the health insurance debates throughout last year, which you didn't see, but it was the same kind of thing. Okay, who's speaking to whom and what's the latest? It was difficult, and so it's a good reminder that, first of all, you're new, you're trying to digest, but second of all, that we need to be more prudent, if that's the best word, in our communications and thoughtful. Yeah. So, good.
And the only other thing I got is Claudia Tenney, our councilwoman. It appears that she's helping a lot of townships out with shovel-ready projects. And I don't know if we have any on the table. My main concern right now is maybe the water tower. The article I read, millions and millions of dollars going out to local communities. So, if we could get something maybe on the table, on the drawing table maybe, they could call her up and say, hey, look, we're looking on doing this, and community needs it. Same with the ambulance service. Throw that at her and see what she can do. Of course, it's an election year, so I think she's got to run again. 2 years for Congress, isn't it?
Every 2 years.
Yeah.
So, but I think it's something for us to look at.
Well, I like that suggestion of the water tower. I'll write an email to the village asking, what's the latest on that. We were told 2 years ago,
About
2
that.
years ago, that it would be 5 years from then that they would probably have to paint it. But painting it was going to be $1 million. I'm thinking, for $1 million, maybe we can get a new tower, right? That was my naive question. So it's time to ask that question. If it's 3 years from now or less,
Right.
now's the time to be seeking grants.
Or any water upgrades.
Oh,
Actually,
yeah, it's
it's
very expensive.
I think it's Hilton, they just, was the latest one I read, how she helped out with. $2.2 million, so.
Hilton/Kendall, when they got that grant for bringing sewer out along the water. All right, good, thank you. I'll reach out to the village and ask if there's an update.
Yeah, now's the time to get federal money, we're gonna get it, because
Other midterms.
Okay, and then the resolutions, I've drafted those, and of course the ones that will be carryovers from last year at this time. So town insurance authorization, adopt the FOIL language for the employee handbook. Longevity bonus one that we talked about for Roger, and short-term rental law. I'll poll with Harold included, folks, what they want to do. If they want to vote, if they want to wait. I'm fine either way. All right, that's it. We'll see you on Thursday.
Should I just send you a copy of the February draft? Right.
You did. Yes, thank you.
You want to join them then?
Yeah, do you wanna write it on there, Connie?
Bill, there was something about a longevity bonus? What the hell?
Paul, are
was
you
it?
still recording?
Yes.
It's no longer a meeting, so I'd appreciate it if you didn't record.
You're in a meeting?
I said there's no longer a meeting, so I'd appreciate it if you didn't record.
I can
You just do it
record.
as a person to person now? and just be
It's a
harassment?
public meeting. It's a public
What are you
place.
doing with
I
these videos?
Did she send it? I
just
didn't
got them
get it.
stashed.
Huh?
I just have them.
And you're gonna continue videoing after the meeting is over and see what you can pull from us?
Why?
It really is unsettling that you do that, you know that, right?
I just
It's
asked.
hilarious that you're still taping right now.
I just asked
Is it
about.
on YouTube? What are you gonna do?
Yeah, there's stuff on YouTube. Go on YouTube.
I'm just surprised you're still taping.
Well, I didn't have time
Well,
to pull it
why
off,
don't
but I mean,
tape
what are you
and ask Bill a
getting?
direct question about the meeting.
I just asked him.
That's what you did.
You said
just asked
something-
him about something associated with the meeting, and you're still taping. And I'm kind of pissed off
It-
about it.
Really?
Sure. So So now you know how I feel about it.
Good, I'm glad.